we've seen how to add a row to the bottom of a data set. What about if we want to add a column to the end of a data set? And personally, I find this a lot less intuitive than adding a row. So let me show you a couple different ways to do it. Here is one way. I'm going to say new ds brackets all. So that says that we're going to do something to all of the rows. And then this is the unintuitive part. I'm going to explicitly say what kind of association I want to be in all of the rows. And then I put a pound. And so think of this as like a pure function. Okay, so pound is like the variable and finishes the pure function. And what's going to be the input to this pure function? It's going to be whatever row we're in. So it'll either be this row with the 310, or it'll be this row with the -4, 6, and so on. So what if I want to have a new column? Let's call the column C, and I want 2 in every position. So I would say just don't worry so much about what this notation is meaning. Just sort of remember this syntax. And it has some nice advantages. Like, for example, instead of having a constant value in this column, I could have something like pound bracket B. So this says, give me, in column C, give me 2 times whatever was in the B column. So like 2 times -7 gives me -14. And if I wanted, instead of saying all of the rows, I could have said like, give me the first row, the 4th row, and the 4th row. So what does this give me? Gives me the old first row. Okay, this 310 gives me the old 4th row, and then another of the old 4th row. Okay, or I could have had 1, 4, 3. Okay, so in the previous one, 10 came before 300 in the A column. Now 10 comes after because I listed 3 after this 4. Okay, but let's go back to all. There's also an abbreviation here that comes up sometimes, which is I don't need to use this bracket after the pound sign. I can just do pound and then the string, or the string name, I should say. Okay, so that's the exact same thing. And if you wanted, I could have been more explicit and put the times here. Okay, put the multiplication symbol here. So that is one way to add a column to a data set. And if I look at new data set, okay, notice that it doesn't have that column because I didn't save it. I could have saved it by doing something like this or choosing a new variable name. But for now, let's just not change it. Okay, so here I'm on this new data set, and let me show you another way where I can add a column. And this way is based on the idea of just make a whole new data set and then join together the 2 data sets. So let's make that new data set. I want it to have the same number of rows as this one. So I want it to have 5 rows. So let me do not list, but table. And there are going to be 5 rows, so I'm going to put 5 things into this table. And let's just put an association with, let me call it, new column goes to 2. So that's a list. If I want to change it into a data set, I can wrap it in this data set head. And let's call this, how about, extra for like extra column. Okay, and now if I do join new data set extra, it's almost going to work. But by default, it tries to join the new data set at the bottom. So if I want it to join on the right, I say comma 2. And how should you think about that? Well, this index here, like index 4, this is the first index, whereas like this element, it's in the second column. I think of that as the second index. So like 4, 3, the 3 is in the second index, and that 3 corresponds to the third column. So here, putting this comma 2, that's saying join along the second index. So join as a new column rather than as a new row. And so this was another way to get a new column. And to recap, we made it first by making a data set with the same number of rows and then joining along the second dimension. And this way has a lot more flexibility in some sense. For example, I could do I from 1 to 5. And instead of saying every value is going to be 2, I could say every value is going to be 2 times I. Okay, and then if I join that, I get 2 times I in the ith row. And I don't know of any way I could have gotten that using this previous syntax. And you might say, oh, well, the previous syntax was definitely better because I could reference things in other columns in the previous syntax. But I would say I can also do that here. It just won't look quite as compact. For example, I could say I want to also add plus 10 times whatever is in the B column. So I could say plus 10 times new data set. I'm in the ith row of the bth column. And let's join it up here. And so what happened? Let's just look in the second row. So on one hand, I wanted a 4 from this part, 2 times 2, because we're in the second row. And I also wanted 10 times whatever is in the B column, so 10 times 6. So we got 4 plus 60, we got 64. So that's where this 64 came from.